The lids of the wooden crates snapped open one by one and hundreds of cats stepped onto the scorching sand. They had really released these tiny creatures into a place where most forms of life could never survive. Each individual cat, after a breeding process that cost up to $40,000 USD, was released with the same seriousness as assembling a weapon. What were they doing to make these cats go without water and become immune to venomous snakes? What did they plan to use them for? Are humans truly in control of nature, or are we simply provoking it? Stay until the end, and you'll find the answers for yourself. The Arabian desert is expanding like a ravenous creature, swallowing tens of thousands of hectares of farmland every year and pushing the boundary of life deeper into the sand. At the heart of this dry region, the United Arab Emirates is facing one of the most extreme heat waves in its history in Al Ain, and Liwa temperatures have surpassed 129°54 degrees CC. Grass burns to ash, livestock collapses from exhaustion, and farms now rely on artificial misting systems just to keep their animals from dying of heat. In reality, more than 80% of the country's livestock feed has to be imported. In an effort to cut costs, farmers switched to cheap fertilizers from Southeast Asia, unaware they were carrying dormant reptile eggs. When the soil reached 122 degrees Celsius, they all hatched at once. Hundreds of strange snakes emerged, including the brown tree snake, the same species that once wiped out nearly all native forest birds on Guam. And yes, what you're thinking is exactly what happened. At the same time, rats and other rodents multiplied out of control, raiding chicken eggs, attacking newborn lambs, and even chewing on sheep wool just to survive the scorching heat. Some farms lost up to 40% of their dates and dairy production. But that wasn't all. This was also the moment when a mysterious cat species began to disappear. And as you might know, cats hold a sacred place in Islamic culture tied to the Prophet Muhammad. You may have even seen this species before it was once chosen as the mascot for Animal Planet Middle East in 2019. At first glance, these two problems seem unrelated, right? But in reality, the plan was to bring this cat species back, not only to preserve a national symbol, but also to take on the invasive creatures threatening the region. You might be wondering, in a place where almost nothing can survive, what could a single cat possibly do? Meet the Arabian sandcat, the only feline on Earth that has fully evolved to live in the Sahara, the Arabian desert, and the barren regions of Iran and Pakistan. This species can withstand temperatures from 5 degrees C to 52 degrees C. And yes, they do not need to drink water at all. Every drop of hydration comes directly from their prey, small birds, lizards, snakes, and large insects. Their kidneys can reabsorb water 3 to 4 times more efficiently than a normal house cat, similar to the kangaroo rat, which can live its entire life without drinking a single drop of water. At night, sand cats switch into full stealth mode. They hunt mostly under a crescent moonlight bright enough to spot prey, but dim enough to stay hidden. Their oversized ears allow them to hear movement beneath the sand up to depths often described as 180 meters. That number sounds exaggerated, but it reflects the cat's extreme sensitivity to low-frequency vibrations. A wide head, huge ears, and thick fur on the paws allow them to move without leaving tracks, as if gliding across the desert. They can sprint at 40 km/h, about as fast as an Olympic sprinter. They also reproduce quickly, a 60-day pregnancy, 2 to 3 litters per year, and kittens that mature early. In prey-rich environments, their population can explode in just a few seasons. And though each cat weighs only 1.4 or 3.4 kilos, they carry one unbelievable advantage: they are immune to most snake venom. Yes, you heard that right. This makes them one of the very few species bold enough and capable enough to take down snakes up to a meter long. If you think the sandcat story ends only at catching snakes to help farmers, then you are underestimating one of the boldest biological projects in the Middle East. Because the UAE did not start from zero. This country once created miracles with the Arabian gazelle and the oryx species that once stood on the brink of extinction, but were revived thanks to the network of the Arabian Wildlife Breeding Center. The Sandcat project is the next step in the strategy of building green power. It all began in 2003 when the number of Arabian sandcats dropped below 250 individuals. The UAE decided to follow a path that only super-rich and super-determined nations dare to choose, freezing genes placing this desert cat species into the National Gene Bank, just like the way the US did with bison or China preserved the giant panda. At Al Ain Zoo, the largest sandcat breeding center on the planet, the project is directly sponsored by Sheikh bin Zayed through the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi, forming a green power circle in which major facilities such as Dubai Safari Park or the Arabian Wildlife Breeding Center fiercely compete for the title of the nation leading Middle Eastern nature restoration. Yes, you didn't mishear, reintroducing a tiny cat species is also a geopolitical race. To create a new generation of sandcats, the UAE applied IVF technology, in vitro fertilization, a method usually used only for humans. By 2010, the experiment had 37 failed embryos, only 8 embryos survived, and finally only 2 kittens were born healthy. The success rate was less than 6%. Each individual cost $20,000, $40,000 USD, and the lab maintained expenses of more than $1 million USD per year. A creature weighing 2 kilos but costing the same as a luxury car, would any other country dare invest like that? But the UAE still did. To increase the success rate further, the UAE also imported genes from the US to increase strength from Europe to reduce diseases, and from the Middle East to enhance heat tolerance. They created a generation of hybrid super sandcats that were stronger, tougher, and smarter. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? But after mixing so much, whether these animals still retain the precious Felis margarita Thinobia, gene line of the Arabian region or not. But anyway, by 2025, the UAE owns the largest sandcat population in the world. But to achieve this result, the UAE had to face a challenger that is almost impossible: the sandcat, an animal that nature designed so that no one could control it. In the wild, they leave zero footprint in the literal sense. The thick fur under their paws works as both soundproofing and insulation, allowing them to walk on sand without creating tracks like a drone hovering a few centimeters above the ground, gliding without leaving any sign. You think you can use trap cameras. Sorry, that is almost useless. When the infrared light flashes, the sandcat immediately closes its eyes so it doesn't reflect the light, meaning every footage is just wind and sand. Biologists call them the ghost of the dunes. During the day, the chance of encountering one is nearly 0%. At night below, 10%, which means if you ever see one in the wild, it is almost impossible. One expert even joked, tracking a sandcat is like hunting a legendary Pokemon but 10 times harder. The activity range of the sandcat is a real nightmare for the UAE. A male sandcat can control 300 kilometers and a female about 200 kilometers, equivalent to the entire area of Singapore. But what is even more frightening is that they are not territorially loyal at all. Today, you track them in Al Ain, but just a few days later, they can disappear 150 kilometers toward Oman. This directionless movement trait makes every effort to use sandcats as a tool for pest control quickly turn into a joke. Release them at the edge of Al Ain, and just 1 week later, tracks appear again 150, 200 kilometer away. Ecologists call this phenomenon zero effect, an effectiveness of zero in controlling snakes, rodents, or anything humans expect. You want them to protect your date farms. Unfortunately, they have already left the area before even starting. But the story does not end there. The second risk, the danger of becoming a new invasive species, truly makes the scientific community cautious. Globally, cats are on the list of the 100 most dangerous invasive species. They have caused the extinction of more than 63 bird species, and feral cats in Australia alone wiped out 25 native species. So what will happen when a small cat species that is immune to venom, does not need to drink water, and can travel extremely long distances is released into an ecosystem that is already fragile? The third risk is even more frightening: the collapse of the food pyramid. A normal ecosystem always has a pyramid shape, wide at the bottom, narrow at the top. But when the UAE releases hundreds of predators into a system that only has enough food for a few, the top of the pyramid expands unnaturally. And nature does not like that. Two scenarios will occur. 1. Not enough food, the cats die in large numbers. 2. Predator reset, the cats begin wiping out everything that moves: snakes, rodents, lizards, ground birds. When the lower layers disappear, the domino effect happens immediately: fewer lizards, more locusts. More locusts, crops destroyed. More carcasses, diseases explode. And do not forget the darkest scenario: the sand cat enters the cities. If you think the desert is dangerous, then imagine them appearing in urban areas where there's endless trash, endless rats, endless birds, and streetlights that create perfect hunting conditions. More than 2,000 animal species have successfully adapted to city life. The sand cat, with its ability to climb rooftops, slip through ventilation ducts, and even use security cameras as observation points, will definitely be no exception. The fourth risk that few people mention: disease. Sand cats can carry feline HIV, toxoplasma, and parvovirus. Just one contact with the native Arabian wildcat is enough to wipe out an entire population. And finally, in the desert, the sand cat is not the absolute ruler. They can be killed by eagles, hyenas, mongooses, and even wild dogs in just a few minutes. This means that only one harsh hunting season is enough for the entire reintroduction project to collapse within a few months. In reality, if you think the UAE is the first to try releasing a small carnivore back into the wild, then they have forgotten one thing: the world has already done it, and has almost completely failed. As in Israel, where the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo once tried to bring the sand cat back to the Arava Valley. Everything was prepared carefully: semi-wild enclosures, transition zones, experts monitoring 24/7. But then, just a few months after opening the cages, all released individuals died. A 100% failure. A dry report stated the captive individuals could not adapt. But behind those words was a tragedy everyone avoided talking about. They did not know how to avoid predators, did not know how to find food, and no longer understood what a safe zone even meant. Can you feel that helplessness? Farther north in Russia, the reintroduction project of the Caucasian Persian leopard was once hoped to be one of the major milestones of global conservation. But the harsh reality: among the 10 individuals released, 3 died, 2 went missing, including Victoria Kili and Elris, names once expected to rewrite history. 1 was trapped illegally, 1 died of exhaustion in winter, 1 disappeared after a landslide. All became symbols of the price paid when captive animals are released into a harsh environment. Then came the Netherlands with the ambition to recreate a European Serengeti called Oostvaardersplassen. At first, the idea was incredibly romantic: release deer, wild cattle, and wild horses into a vast area to restore a primordial natural world. But after just one harsh winter in 2018, 90% of the herd starved to death, more than 5,230 animals, leaving images that shocked all of Europe. The investigation committee concluded they forgot the top of the pyramid. Without predators, the herd expanded beyond what the ecosystem could support, then collapsed. In Australia in 2025, New South Wales relocated 13 koalas to a new forest to restore the population. Only 2 days after heavy rain, 7 individuals died, many were septic, and the project was forced to shut down. But not every story is bleak. In 1995, the U.S. reintroduced gray wolves to Yellowstone, and the result became a global textbook case. When the predator returned to its proper place in the ecological pyramid, the entire system restarted. Elk herds dropped to a stable level, trees grew back along rivers, beavers returned to build dams, and the water flow changed. It was the only example proving that not every reintroduction effort fails, only if the role of the species is correctly understood. And finally, the story of releasing sandcats into the desert to save the land is no longer an ecological experiment, but a test of how well humans understand nature. Are we saving the ecosystem or accidentally pushing it into a new spiral? Will the sandcat become the farm-protecting hero or the next biological disaster of the Middle East? And most importantly, if you live in the UAE, would you dare let a predator that does not need water, is immune to venom, and moves across 300 kilometers suddenly appear right behind your house? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to follow the next stories.